Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center, Kaustubha. Welcome to the show, and welcome to Walk On Wednesday. Walk On Wednesday is when we invite, for the beginning of the show, just for a few minutes, one of our guests on, one of our people in our lives that we find a little interesting. And today we have, from the band, the bass player from the band, Dillinger Escape Plan, Liam Wilson. Welcome, Liam.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
How are you? Liam's a regular Zoomer. He's here at 5 a.m. practically every morning, and he's in a band that was huge, actually. Why is there's so many musicians to get into Bhakti? Why is that?
Is that a rhetorical question?
Yeah, no, I'm curious. Why is it?
I think you've touched on it a lot. I think looking at it from the George Harrison perspective, you kind of have a lot of what you want at arm's reach, and you're still not satisfied. And I think people are trying to figure out why not.
That can't get no satisfaction.
Yeah.
Such a real song. Because it seems like, especially if you're in a band, and your band was bigger than my bands, you guys were like a sort of like a metally, punky. I mean, you guys would tour these huge places, and then it sort of like seems, from an outsider's view, it seems like you have everything. You have people that adore you. You have like extreme. I mean, most people, even very wealthy people, sometimes don't get extreme validation like you do when you're on a stage and getting that type of worship.
You can't just buy that, and I think that's kind of what's interesting about it. And maybe you can relate. It was a slow burn, so you don't really even, you kind of notice all of a sudden there's a lot of people in the crowd, or like, oh, these people are all here for my band. Whoa. But yeah. At least for me, I always had that imposter syndrome of like, they're going to leave before we step on stage, or,
right.
And even when it's happening, I'm like, dude, look at your hands, check this out. You don't really even feel connected to it in a way.
Yeah, like on stage. It's sort of like, what am I doing up here?
Yeah, who am I?
And you had a very interesting Krishna miracle. Would you like to share?
Yeah. Well, about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I had a cancer diagnosis and a surgery. And just cutting to it, as I was going under the anesthesia, the Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya mantra entered my mind, and it's not something that I was really familiar with.
Well, what were you into back? That was only a year ago.
That was about a year. So
seems like I've known you for years.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly known you for years, and I can say that you're one of the anchors that brought this into my life at a young age with shelter. And, and even youth of today, like watching that progression. And I think, you've used the analogy of a hook in your mouth, and Krishna's kind of slowly reeling you back. I feel like for years it's been that. I can remember getting a copy of the Gita and reading it from, a Warped Tour, going to your, the 6 pillars at Palo Santo a couple years ago. I think that was like really where it started to take root. And then not long after that was the surgery. And I feel like maybe that's where the mantra came from, but I've just been reverse engineering all of this. And then, this show pops up and I start listening casually, and it turns out you're reading, an ancient text about a king who's about to die in 7 days and the things that are going through his head. And I'm like, this is exactly what's going through my head right now.
And the invocation is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
There we are. So
maybe it's coming from many lifetimes past.
That's my deep thinking as well.
So before you got into it, before you went under, and then as you were coming out.
And as I was coming out, now, I've been into transcendental meditation. I've been meditating a lot. So
Transcendental meditation, for those who don't know, is a type of meditation taught by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, which involves, what does it involve? I've never
basically done it. It's a real simple, they would call it like the householder's meditation, where you're basically just you're also given a mantra, and you're just supposed to recite that. It's very similar to, I guess it's just meditation. As
20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening.
Yeah, exactly.
Meditation on a beach mantra.
And I thought it was useful. It was great for the mindfulness, relaxation kind of stuff, and quieting my mind, but not necessarily taking it anywhere. And now I'm finding japa to be a little bit more, precise for what I'm looking for.
It takes you somewhere. Sega, also an old school hardcore guy like yourself, just wrote in and said, yeah, TM brought me here too. Yeah, I think there's something to be saying about my mind is out of control. How can I just still my mind so I can get on with even material life? How can I get on with material life?
Yeah, I mean, I needed something like that out in the touring circuit. I needed somewhere to go where I couldn't. I needed to escape somewhere when there's nowhere to escape.
I thought all rock and roll bands were on drugs and partying and womanizers, and you were sitting backstage meditating. What fun are you?
I mean, it went all ways. It was a long journey.
Anyway, honored to have you on the show on a regular basis. It's always inspirational to see, especially these Zoomers, because they just show up on a regular basis, and you think, man, okay, they won't show up tomorrow, but they're here every day. And it's that regular hearing of the Bhagavatam that really transforms our consciousness. So,
hey, thank you.
Appreciate you and all that you do and all that you give, Prabhu.
I'll continue to be here. Keep doing what you do. It's great.
Always
stuff.
Happy to see you here.
Yeah,
and family.
Yeah, they're upstairs somewhere sleeping.
Okay.
Pretending to sleep at least.
All right, let's dive in here. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, Text 5. We start with this little mantra. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva nirotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead, Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Milatam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Oh, Kaustubha.
Prabhu.
We are here, Prabhu, the Srimad Bhagavatam.
All right.
Text 5. Anything you want to say before we dive into the sweet nectarian juice pot?
Do I have my snorkel and goggles on? I think I may need it. We're going to hear Maharaj Prickett now is going to ask questions. I mean, it's kind of one general type of question. But I suggest what we do is we read 5 through 10. Let's just read them straight through.
All right.
And then we
How's
can...
my connection today? Do I sound solid?
Sometimes it sounds a little mushy, but you haven't cut out like you were yesterday. So,
Brother. All right. Maharaj
when you lean forward like that, it sounds a little bit better, I think.
All right, maybe move my mic forward a little.
Yeah.
Maharaj Prickett said, "O learned Brahmin, you know everything because you are without material contamination. Therefore, whatever you have spoken to me appears perfectly right. Your speeches are gradually destroying the darkness of my ignorance, for you are narrating the topics of the Lord." Text 6. I beg to know from you how the personality of Godhead, by his personal energies, creates these phenomenal universes as they are, which are inconceivable even to the great demigods. Kindly describe how the Supreme Lord, who is all-powerful, engages his different energies and different expansions in maintaining again and again winding up the phenomenal world of the world in the sporting spirit of a player. It's like an actor, right? Mm-hmm. O learned Brahmana, the transcendental activities of the Lord are all wonderful, and they appear inconceivable because even great endeavors by many learned scholars have still proved insufficient for understanding them. The personality of Godhead is one, whether he alone acts with the modes of material nature, or simultaneously expands in many forms, or expands consecutively to direct the modes of nature. Kindly clear up all these doubtful inquiries, because you are not only vastly learned in Vedic literatures and self-realized in transcendence, but are also a great devotee of the Lord and are therefore as good as the personality of Godhead. Text 11?
No, why don't we stop there?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple, maybe 2 or 3 themes here, that we could touch on, even more, really. But, we're seeing that Maharaj Prickett is now, he's inquiring. He's king, he's the big shot. And this is a teenager just walked up, not even wearing any clothes,
Yeah.
But look at the respect that is being shown. The way that he's speaking to him, the humility with which he's inquiring, is notable. So I think we could talk about that a little bit, and we're also the subject that he's asking about. He's got 7 days left to live, and he could have jumped. The Bhagavatam's going to move to this esoteric side. The pastimes of Krishna with the residents of Vrindavan, with the gopis, and so on, which is kind of the pinnacle of the entire thing. But he's not jumping there. And maybe we can read a little bit about that, actually. Why don't we, if we go back to text 6, and I'll read the verse again. He says, I beg to know from you how the personality of God, by his personal energies, creates these phenomenal universes as they are, which are inconceivable even to the great demigods. And so then if we dip into some of the commentary there, Srila Prabhupada writes, Maharaj Prickett did not ask his spiritual master Shukadeva Goswami to narrate Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. He wanted to hear first about the creation of the Lord. Shukadeva Goswami did not say that the king should hear about the direct transcendental pastimes of the Lord. The time was very short, and naturally Shukadeva Goswami could have gone directly to the 10th canto to make a shortcut of the whole thing, as generally done by professional reciters. And this is something you see Prabhupada bring up occasionally, right?
It's like probably a thing.
It is a thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing. They have it's not uncommon in India. They have what's called the Bhagavat Saptaha.
Right.
Which is, it means like 7 days of Bhagavatam recitation. And
in the same way Maharaj Prickett is hearing it for 7 days, so.
But the similarities stop there, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the point. Is that
as critical as we are against the Bhagavat Saptaha, or Prabhupada is, I'm thinking it's a million times better than what people are doing in America. You know what I mean? for sense gratification.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of like a pious way. It's a pious way of having an outing with your family, as opposed to
For sure, the intention, yeah, is nice of that. But
going to Vegas.
yeah, but what Prabhupada's pointing out is problematic with it, is that you get people that they make a living from jumping to this esoteric part of the literature, explaining in a way that it'll be misunderstood, right? And you know, the erotic nature of Krishna's pastimes with the gopis and so on, focusing just on that. And the point is that you will not understand that clearly unless you understand this more fundamental kind of, unless you understand like the nature of the Supreme or the nature of God in this more fundamental way. So he's saying, so he's you know, a little dig at these professional reciters. They're not approaching it with the proper mood, and people aren't getting what they're really meant to get out of it. So he says, but neither the king nor the great speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam jumped up like organizers of Bhagavatam. I guess he means the organizers of these Bhagavat Saptahas, these readings. Both of them proceeded systematically so that both future readers and hearers, that's us, might take lessons from the example of the procedure of reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. Those who are under the control of the external energy of the Lord, that's also us, right? Yes. Or in other words, those who are in the material world, must first of all know how the external energy of the Lord is working under the direction of the Supreme Personality. And afterwards, one may try to enter into the activities of his internal energy. So there's these different energies, internal, external. And I think in the seventh, the commentary on the seventh verse, Prabhupada's going to go more into that. But, you know, there's got to be a respect shown, you know. Mm. What do you think about that, Raghunath?
Well, it's one of those things when if people think they know something, they can't hear anything. So, in the way that the idea is like, we are going to preach to them. I got news for you. Like, no one wants to hear somebody I don't want to hear anybody preaching to me. But at the same time, if I'm inquisitive about something, I'm all ears. So if we actually want to share what we're doing, it should be to people who want to know what we're doing. I don't like the even personally, and this may sound crazy, but I don't like the concept of preaching. Because preaching means you're like trying to like get it out there to somebody who's not necessarily even interested in what you have to say. But when people have interest, that's when like everything changes, everything flips around. Even my relationship with Joe Rogan, it was like I never, in the old days, when we were hanging out, I never preached to him. But he had a type of respect to me just as a fighter, and we used to fight, and he appreciated my flexibility, appreciated my.
I appreciate your flexibility, Raghunath.
Thank you, sir.
On a daily basis.
There's all material, but it's an interesting point here because Joe and Eddie, these guys we did jiu-jitsu with, they were just like, they were good fighters, and they were sort of like into their thing, marijuana and stuff like that, and they sort of had that ego about those guys. But what happened was, they appreciated me for flexibility, and they appreciated me because I could fight, and they appreciated that I had a good endurance, which came from, pranayam and doing yoga every day and stuff.
From your mastery of the
yoga asanas
and the breathing
techniques. Here's my point I'm saying.
Yes.
I never preached to them, even though I could have, because those guys they always like joked with me that I was vegetarian, and sort of like almost in a cutting way, but I never preached at them about anything. I just sort of shut up and just, unlike myself, it was quiet.
And 20 years later, they're still smoking marijuana and eating meat.
Not that. What happened was, at a certain point, everything switched with my relationship with him. Right. And he started saying, well, what do you think about, like, why is your endurance so well? How can I become more flexible? Once a person goes from like sort of like arguing with about stuff and trying to like wrestle with you about stuff, and then finally starting to say, hey, I got a question for you. I got a very sincere question for you. And then I started teaching him private yoga. And then once it flipped, then I could start to share stuff. And I think that's part of like what all of us do as teachers, because I'm looking at everybody here, I'm looking at Vegan Trucker, Papa Tony, all of us here on the show are also explaining what we're getting into to somebody. Because generally where that person that we're explaining it to is going to determine how much they can hear. So we have to become like expert at when to tell people these things, because otherwise you meet with a lot of resistance. You tell your family, hey, I believe in reincarnation, I don't eat meat. It's a tough thing to just drop out of the sky if it's Thanksgiving and you're home with your family and you're like, this is all demonic, I'm not going to do it. You have to know how to do it where we're not almost like offending and pushing people away. And sometimes it means complete silence. You don't say anything. You say, I'm not hungry. I'm not that hungry today, you know? And sometimes it has to be from a place where you see an opening. But when they start becoming inquisitive, that's when it can really flow. So that was the whole Bhagavatam, is we approach in a humble way. You know, another thing, Kaustubha, is in Vedic culture, there's this whole idea, you know, how we give the teacher a raised seat, which is, even in like negotiation, it's always better to be above the other person in a negotiation, because you have a sort of a home field advantage, so to speak.
Psychological.
It's a psychological thing. So we go out of the way and give the teacher a raised seat.
We consciously create that psychological hierarchy. Or,
you know, sometimes Radhanath Swami will say, sit down with us, and we'll say, no, I want to sit on the floor. Oh, no, please sit here. No, I like, even though the teacher may say, no, I'd like to sit here, we are encouraging ourselves to be lower. Even though the teacher may want to be friendly to us, in my mind, I'm never thinking, this is my buddy. I always want to think of myself, I'm a student. Please instruct me. I don't want to become too familiar with you like that. I want to consider you a teacher in my life. And so the student likes to keep that separation, and the teacher is given this type of position. The idea is where bhakti can flow. It flows like from a mountain spring. It flows higher.
A mountain spring.
A mountain spring. You like that? Poetic.
You know
about that, Mara? Yeah, she's nodding.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I was muted.
Mara says yes.
Mara agrees. You know, and another interesting about that, like you're saying, the raised seat that the speaker has. You're right. You know, it is creating a psychological. It's assisting the most helpful psychological disposition.
Sure.
At the same time, the speaker who's sitting on that seat, before they sit on the seat, they actually bow down to the seat, right? And then when they sit on that seat, their mentality is, it's not for me, but because I'm, for this moment, playing the role of representing this guru lineage, this parampara, this lineage of teachers, the seat is really for them. I'm acting as the representative, right? And
you're respecting you're bowing to the lineage, and you're representing the seat. It's pretty cool. The seat itself is called the Vyas Asan, which means the sitting place of Vyas.
Exactly.
So once Kaustubha's on that chair, he's not thinking, hey, okay, it's me time.
Finally, I'm up here where I'm supposed to be.
Where I'm supposed to be. You're down there. I'm up here. The whole thing is, Kaustubha's humbly approaching that seat saying, I'm not qualified, but while I'm on this seat, I have a duty to represent Vyas. I'm a representative of Vyasadeva. So there's certain parameters of how I'm going to behave, of how I'm going to speak, of what I'm going to say. And it's a very, very humbling position to be in that seat, because we have to become the representative of Vyas. Makes me realize, man, I've got to change my ways.
Me too.
Vyas here.
Me too.
I've got to clean up my act.
You know, but I guess maybe there's this common theme, all across, that the seed is created to facilitate a mood of respect. The questioner is coming with this mood of respect, and we see that so clearly here, through the words and the disposition of Maharaj Pariksit, how he's inquiring. And then again, the speaker who's sitting on that seat first shows respect to the seat. Then he's meditating. He'll begin with prayers to that guru parampara, to that guru lineage. Again, showing respect, and also feeling respect for the audience too. Humbly seeing oneself as the servant of that audience as well. This culture of respect, it's built into the culture. It's built into the etiquette, and when you see it and when you feel it, we've got a culture of disrespect.
You got a culture of disrespect. Matter of fact, if you're up there, we're like, who do you think you are up there on that seat?
Yeah.
Who's this guy coming over here? This white male. Get him down there.
And so when you enter into that culture of respect, and it can't be phony, it can't be artificial, it's got to be real. But when you enter into it, it actually not only does it feel beautiful and nice and special, but it is the conduit. It is the culture that facilitates this transmission of knowledge, and that's part. Maybe that'll come out in some of the stuff that we read today too. That the idea. We spoke, we used these terms, what was it, what did I say the other day? Transrational, rational and transrational.
Yes. Nice.
So like there's a rational idea of like what's happening, in a didactic sense that, okay, someone's going to speak Bhagavatam.
Didactic.
You like that?
I like it.
Someone's going to speak Bhagavatam. It's information. One can hear that information and process that information and memorize that information and walk away having learned something. But then there's this rational aspect to it, in a sense, right? That there's an atmosphere by which transcendental knowledge, not just transcendental information, but the understanding of it, the imbibing of it, the realization of it. It's like Krishna says, I'm only going to allow it to work under certain conditions, right? And that is that culture of respect, the humility, that one approach. Even if you approach that from a rational sense, it's like, well, why does that respect have to? If I know something, I know it, right? If there's the words on the page and I can read them. But the fact is two people will read that same book and one will walk away completely inspired and ready to transform their life and have their life transformed. And another person may even be a professor of it, right? A professor of Hinduism or whatever it may be, and may never even develop any faith in it, may not have their life transformed in any significant way by it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, and so it's like one is Krishna reserves who will be able to understand it. And two, I think it also, like, if you want to look at it in a rational way, like that seems like a transrational kind of thing going on. But if you want to look at even at that in a rational way, it's like it's only when we desire to exit the illusion that all this information is going to tear down the illusion that we live in moment to moment. And if we still want to enjoy the illusion, if we still want to enjoy this world separately from God, then it won't be revealed, because we need to be in that illusion to enjoy separately from God. And in that way, God is fulfilling our desire to embrace the illusion. And when one gets really sincere and says, you know what, I've had enough. I don't want the illusion anymore. I don't want to be the center of the universe. I really want to connect to God spiritually. And when one has that mood in a mood of humility, then it's like suddenly the same thing that you read a year ago when you weren't in that mood, it sinks in and it activates and it grows in you in a different way. It sprouts and grows in you in a different way, because you're now fertile for it.
and this is sort of why someone can even study everything you're doing, studying everything Mara's doing, studying everything Liam's doing. And it's just like, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's one of these things, it becomes more revealed as you become devoted to it. I use the example, bringing it back to the hardcore scene, Liam. I think you'll like this. Get back here. Where did he go?
He's gone.
He's gone. He got his walk on Wednesday, and now he's out of here.
He walked off. There he is.
Get back here. I'm talking to you. You know, if you in the old days, if you didn't know what, do you remember the Village Voice, Kaustubha?
Of course, that was the only way to get information back in the day.
So the Village Voice was this newspaper in New York, and I remember one time they did a expose on the hardcore scene, like in 1982.
And not an expose,
whatever. It was it was like sort of like made it look much more crazy than it actually was, I think.
Do you think so?
No, maybe not. The idea is, if you were driving by in a car and saw all these crowded kids, no, I mean,
the cover was provocative at the time, I suppose.
The cover was provocative. Anyway, when you got to know, or if you became devoted to it, you realize, oh, these people aren't that bad. This person's very cool. The stage diving's not so violent. Back then, stage diving was brand new. It's actually more like a fun football game. It's not what the Village Voice cracked it up to be. When you become devoted to something, you are allowed entrance into it. And when you're just looking at it from the outside, you can never get in. That's the hardcore example. The Vedic example is the honey jar. The honey jar is, you can't get that honey jar. You can examine it, you can smell it, but you still can't understand honey unless you open it up and stick your paw in. So, yeah, you just dip it in.
Okay. Why don't we read the commentary to text 7? And the verse again was, and again you can see the respect, kindly describe how the Supreme Lord, who is all powerful, engages his different energies and different expansions in maintaining and again winding up the phenomenal world in the sporting spirit of a player. Okay. So why don't you read the commentary?
I just want to share.
What do you mean? Oh yeah, share away.
No, it's like if you go to
share. You look excited to share. I can't wait to hear what you're going to share.
Well, I took my kids to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. What's the one by you with the lions?
The Metropolitan Museum of Art. No, they don't have the lions. That's at the library.
No. Not the Metropolitan. Anyway,
the Met.
What's the one? They made the movie of.
They have what?
Mid at the nighttime at the museum.
They have what at nighttime?
Museum. Come on, you guys. I don't watch
the Metropolitan Museum of Art on 82nd Street, 5th Avenue.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Anyway, they have the whole Southeast Asian section.
Okay.
When you go there, and if you think about it, imagine you're in the Southeast. Not you guys, but just imagine anybody is in a Southeast Asian museum, and you think, oh, look at this old Buddha from the 600 BC, and there's one from the Ming Dynasty, or here is this. It's one thing if you see and you think, that's interesting. Oh, that's cool. That's old. That's ancient. It's another thing, like when I take my kids through those things and I think, oh my God, look, it's Lord Vishnu. Look at that beautiful deity of Lord Vishnu.
They have a beautiful Hanuman one there too.
You're seeing it with devotees' eyes. It's no longer you are just walking through a museum. Your heart is extending. And you can't understand that. You can't understand how you could fall in love. But through hearing and chanting of these pastimes, hearing and chanting the mantra, seeing an artik or a puja happening, visiting temples, being absorbed in Bhagavatam, Mahabharata, and all these things, you start to fall in love with these beings.
That's so cool. It's such a cool idea. You know what I've seen in the Met too, which is funny. Because they'll have these, what some people are looking at as
archaeological finds.
Yeah, archaeological finds, or sculptures. These are
ones we stole from a temple.
Well, that's exactly the point, right? These are all stole from temples where people for who knows how many centuries
were worshiping.
Were with deep devotion, meditating on and worshiping and connecting with those very forms.
What are they doing in the museum? They were stolen.
They're stolen. And sometimes, so one person's walking through here and, you know, they're looking at it in terms of an archaeological find. When was it found? Where was it found? Very interesting.
Sculptor.
What does it tell us about this civilization? And another person is looking at it from an artistic sense. Oh, look at artistically how it was formed and the feeling that I get from it. And then, but another person, is looking at, that's Hanuman.
That's my Lord.
And that's my Lord. Yeah, that's Vishnu. That's my Lord.
Rises.
Yeah, and sometimes I've seen coins. People leave coins, right, like as an offering at the feet of those, sculptures, right, quote unquote sculptures. Yeah. So the mood that one has, the understanding, we believe that the sentiments, right? It may be like an old Hindu lady walks into that museum, and suddenly she's standing in front of Lord Vishnu, and she's feeling a sentiment that really is the goal of our whole yoga practice, or the goal of life in one sense, to feel a deep sense of affection, for God. She's feeling that automatically because she's got because she's cultivated the attitude, the mentality, and then from there the knowledge and the understanding, and now it's natural for her,
Yeah, you take a step away from it if you just approach it from art. Oh, that's a nice thing. That tells a nice story.
Yeah. Or history.
History. I just want to learn about history. I want to be cultured. I want to know about different cultures. It's nice, but we're talking about entering into it. That's a whole different animal.
And then that same kind of heart, opened mind, humility, and then informed, through these texts. That same thing happens. Those same people will walk out of that museum and walk into the park and see the park in a different way, or look at the sun and see the sun in a different way. Very interesting, Raghunath. Okay, so here's what you want to read the commentary.
Sure. In the Katha Upanishad 2213, the Supreme Lord is described as the chief eternal being amongst all other eternal individual beings. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam, and the one Supreme Lord who maintains innumerable other individual living beings. Eko Bahunam Yo Vidati Kamam. So all living entities, both in the conditioned state and in a liberated state, are maintained by the Almighty Supreme Lord. Such maintenance is affected by the Lord, though his different expansions of self and three principal energies, namely internal, external, and marginal energies.
Yeah, so through his different energies, he's maintaining everything. And we've spoken about these three energies before, but maybe we talk about them again. Why don't you continue?
The living entities are his marginal energies, and some of them, in the confidence of the Lord, are entrusted with work of creation. Creation also, as are Brahma, Marichi, etc. And the acts of creation are inspired by the Lord unto them. Tene Brahma Hrida. The external energy, or Maya, is also impregnated with jivas. I love that.
Impregnated with jivas, souls.
Jivas.
Us.
Or conditioned souls. We are conditioned. Like we are told how to think, told what's right and what's wrong. We're told how to dress. We are conditioned by material energy.
Programmed,
perhaps. The unconditioned marginal potency acts in the spiritual kingdom, and the Lord, by his different plenary expansions, maintains them in different transcendental relations, displayed in the spiritual sky.
Okay, so why don't we just dig into that just a bit before
I
we
like
continue.
this idea of get a conditioned soul. It's just a great way to put it. Like we are conditioned to think, you use this example too, like in some cultures they eat bugs and they think it's completely normal. Right. And then some cultures are vegetarian. They think that's very, very normal. In some cultures, they'll diet. We're conditioned to diet. We're conditioned to hair, right? How is your hair?
Fashion.
Fashion, what clothes to wear.
Everything, really.
Yeah. And the real question is, what is the original condition? So the Vedas teach the original condition of the soul. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Because if you think of, I'm going to go to a psychiatrist because I've got some issues in my life. What is normal? Where's the psychiatrist trying to bring us to? What is the normal condition of what's a healthy mind? What's a healthy way to live? Like, how do we know? Like, my craziness. How do I know that's not normal? So it's almost like you got to be a pure devotee before you can be a therapist in one sense, because we're trying to get people back to at least square one again. I've drifted off. What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
The pure devotee in one sense is the real therapist, right? It's providing a therapy.
Right.
And so just like a therapy will have a particular, say, medicine that's prescribed along with the proper dosage, and then as well,
normal is. You got to know what normal is.
Yeah, and then along with that, they're also provided like, well, here's the diet and here's the lifestyle. You need to stop doing this and you need to start doing more of that. And otherwise the medicine's not going to have any effect. That's kind of what we're talking about earlier in the week, right? When we're talking about the 10 offenses or the 10 important considerations. The name is, the mantra. That's the medicine. That'll have this powerful transformative effect, but you also need the right conditions under which that you take the medicine. And the guru is kind of instructing in how to do that.
But it's so weird because we can understand, like, okay, I'm a little out of shape. I got to lose some weight, or I'm a little, I got to get some more muscles, or even I got to get a little bit more peaceful. But we're bringing this whole other factor to really understand what you are. You've got to start to diminish the ego and approach with submissive spiritual inquiry. That's like something you don't think of. Like, you need humility to make evolution. What? Can't I just work hard and evolve my body and work hard at business and evolve my business? But it still keeps you on the outside, because approaching Krishna, we go in with deep humility, and then all of a sudden bhakti starts pouring down upon us, and that's the way we transform.
Yeah, it opens up the channel. And so what Srila Prabhupada is speaking about here in this commentary, he's saying that Krishna has different energies. He's got his external energy. That means the material world that we're moving around in. He's got his internal energy. That means, in one sense, himself, but also there's a spiritual realm that works under different laws. And then he's saying there's the marginal energy, and that's us. We're made of spirit, but we're prone to become confused and lost in the material energy. So we're in the margin, right? We're spiritual, but sometimes we're covered. Sometimes we're uncovered. So he's saying, when one is, and by covered, he's using the word here, conditioned, right? Conditioned souls. We're conditioned by the moving material energy into accepting crazy ideas about who we are and what will make us happy. Now, the unconditional marginal potency, that's another way of saying those souls who are not bound by this material world. They're enlightened. They're entirely spiritual. They're not confused.
Not bound by their mind. Not lost in.
So the unconditioned marginal energy, they act in the spiritual kingdom, in a realm that's not working under the same laws as the material realm. And the Lord, by his different plenary expansions, maintains them in different transcendental relations displayed in the spiritual sky. So he said that in the material realm, he creates, and he also hands off creation to others like Brahma and Marichi.
Very cool concept.
Yeah.
Krishna
So he's
not creating.
Yeah. So yeah,
outsourcing it.
Yeah, he might sit and meditate and get the thing started, and then he's outsourcing to Brahma, to Marichi, who are doing further creation. And that's what we're going to hear about going on in these next few chapters. But so he's in the material realm. He has material sub-creators, right? I guess like second and third level and fourth level creators, and fifth and sixth and seventh and 10th level creators, And then he's saying, and that's for the jivas that are conditioned, who have entered into the material realm and are trying to enjoy it separately from him. For the unconditional marginal potency, those who don't want the illusion, who want the reality, they act in the spiritual kingdom, And then the Lord, he says, by his different plenary expansions maintains them in different transcendental relations displayed in the spiritual sky. So if I approach God like a master, then there's a divine expansion and I relate to that. If I approach God like a friend, there's a divine, there's Krishna that I'm, relating to that. So there's a material realm where he expands and there's a material realm where he expands. He's expanding in both. And maybe
I like this.
Yeah.
And to get to like, all right.
I was just going to share one thing, and this is, as we read this chapter and further chapters, there's an analogy that's often used for how Krishna expands his energy in the material realm, and that is like a spider. Right? Spider is a very fascinating creature if you think about it.
Fascinating, actually. Creepy and fascinating.
Creepy and fascinating, both. But the spider...
they're so damn creepy. And why am I conditioned to think they're creepy? Like, where did that come from?
It could just be sweet.
Why isn't it like, that's beautiful?
Why is the furry supposed to be sweet and the eight-legged, weird moving thing?
Well, ever think of it like that? Like, why are spiders, why don't we just accept that? Like, I see a robin or a blue jay, I think, robin, a blue jay. And then I see a spider. We're all disgusted by spiders. What is that collective conditioning? Kaustubha? What is it?
I don't know.
We all hate spiders. Come on, everybody does. We all know that. It's collective conditioning for the human species.
There is collective conditioning, sure. And maybe even that conditioning is reflecting something from the spiritual realm too. Who knows?
Okay. All right.
But let's talk about the spider. From within its own self, it creates its web, right? Comes from outside. It comes from inside itself and creates this external creation, the web. It moves through that web. That web will entangle others, but the spider is never entangled in its own web.
Right. He's right in the web.
He's moving right through that web.
Right in that web.
It's entangling others. They're getting caught up in it.
So this is the analogy of the liberated soul?
Well, and then, no, stay with me. Okay. Not the liberated soul, but Krishna himself.
Okay. He's moving within the web.
First, he creates the web from his own energy. From within. He doesn't collect, the spider doesn't, it's not like a nest where a bird goes out and collects ingredients from outside itself.
Spinning it from his own body.
Spinning it from its own body, moves in that trap that it entangles others, but he's not entangled by it. And then
analogy.
We haven't finished it yet.
Genius.
It's not me. It's Bhagavatam. And then he withdraws it within his own body again.
How does he do that?
Actually, the spider does it by eating. It eats that web. Like, you ever see it come down like on a string and then it goes right back up and the string disappears?
I never saw that.
Yes. You've never seen that? You're a nature guy out there. You're a country boy. How could you have never seen that before?
I don't know. They eat their web. Okay.
Yeah. So the point again is that from within itself.
That's Krishna winding up the pastimes.
Krishna winds up the material realm and then does it again, right? And spider webs are these kind of intricate patterns and
sacred geometry.
Okay, if you want to call it that. So again, we're going to read about how Krishna, from within himself, from his own energy, creates, the incredibly intricate, inconceivably intricate material realm in which we live. How we become entangled in that, how he moves through it without entanglement, and then how he withdraws it within himself, which we'll hear about it, how Lord Vishnu, how from the pores of his skin the universes, are created, and then how with the inhale they're all withdrawn again, back into his divine form.
This is good stuff.
Good stuff. So maybe we just finish up this commentary.
Yeah.
So, the one supreme personality of Godhead.
The one supreme. I lost my spot. You read.
So the one supreme personality of Godhead manifests himself in many. Bahusham. This is from the Upanishads. Eko Bahusham. That the one becomes many. Right. From within his own form. In the spiritual realm, he's becoming many different manifestations. In the material realm, he's creating and empowering many different manifestations. and thus all diversities are in him, and he is in all diversities, although he is nevertheless different from all of them. That is the inconceivable, mystic power of the Lord. And as such, everything is simultaneously one with and different from him by his inconceivable potencies. And this is known as... Sing it, brother. It's right there. You can read it if you want. You don't have to...
Everybody copy and paste that and put it right into YouTube, and you are going to get a good song.
Yeah.
Ever see those guys?
Like live, you mean, or?
Live.
No, I haven't. Have you?
Yeah.
I don't attend rock and roll concerts so much.
I was during Shelter Time.
Yeah.
What was the name of the band? I didn't think of it now.
Cool Shaker.
They were big. They were going to get huge. They were about to like blow up. Something
and then
happened. Nothing, you know, Krishna
withdrew it.
Magic.
Yeah.
It withdrew it. We're all about to get big, Liam. We're all about to blow it.
So this term achintya bheda tattva, beda abeda. It's another compound word, right? Achintya means inconceivable, that you don't come to this understanding just based on your own mental prowess. You have to hear it and understand it from another source. Bed abed, right? Beda abeda. Same but different, right?
Yeah.
Simultaneously, same and different. Right? Achintya bheda tattva, the truth of the oneness and the inconceivable oneness and difference. That everything is Krishna's divine energy. In that sense, it's one with him. We are created of his divine spiritual energy. We're that marginal potency, which is spiritual energy. But we're different too. So therefore, if we go back up to the beginning of this commentary where he says, Nityo Nityanam, Chaitanas Chaitananam, Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. Nityo Nityanam. We're eternal. We are all eternal, but he's the original eternal. Chaitanas Chaitananam. We are all conscious, but he's that original conscious being. Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. From the one, from Eko Bahunam, the many come. And they are dependent, the many are dependent on the one, right? Like the rays of the sun.
There's an authentic us, Kaustubha, underneath the conditioning.
Unconditioned?
Unconditioned Kaustubha.
Well, we don't know much about the unconditioned Kaustubha, but we do know clues are there about the unconditioned Raghunath. How he moves, or should I say she? Her deep
underneath
sentiments.
My layers of false ego, persona, bravado is a very elderly, loving gopi lady.
She's a little chubby.
A little chubby.
She's got a sweet smile.
Strong in the wrist from churning butter. Very strong.
She got real strong hands.
Little manly hands, my gopi form.
And then you scoop out a little of that butter, right? Yeah. And then you see the little baby Krishna crawling around.
We did Sweet Baby Krishna yesterday. It was quite wonderful.
I tuned in at 7 o'clock. You weren't there. It was at 8 o'clock, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then by eight, I was drifting off.
You know what's really, yeah, Mary, you know what's sweet when the people listen in the morning, then they listen at night, then they listen in the morning again. You feel like we're following each other around.
Spend my whole day with these people.
I'm getting sick of these people. But I can't stop.
Thanks. And we had a lot of people joining us live on Zoom today. That was very nice. Especially the people I didn't say good morning to. I'll say it right now. Eva, Rachel, and Jeff, a divine couple, getting married at Super Soul Farm.
I got to get back to them. Forgive me for not getting. We got to get back. We got to get serious about this wedding. There's details to take care of.
Details. Surya Radhika, good morning. Scott Bakos, tattoo master. Hey. And we want to thank Liam for coming on board and sharing his Dillinger escape plan.
Such a great-natured guy, Liam is.
Great guy. He's one of those Sattvic guys. That
Looks like a sage.
He's too Sattvic for me. I told him, he goes, yeah, well, I was into Transcendental Meditation. And then I got into, I was into yoga, Transcendental Meditation. Then I got into Bhakti. I was like, oh, come on. Can we have sort of like drug addiction or a bank robbery where you tripped over a Bhagavad Gita and that was the last thing before they brought you to prison. They said you could keep it and you brought it to prison and you became self-realized in the prison cell. It always has to be some subject story. Well, I have a very balanced life of meditation and rock star. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining us. We have a good group of people here.
Sure
and
do.
we have anything going on today, Mara, on our...
We have a lot of stuff going on. We have 6:30 a.m. gentle yoga with Sorrel from Bhav Wellness in Arizona.
Wow.
Yes,
And then we
Sorrel
have,
from Bhav.
we have a Bhakti recovery group meeting at 1 p.m. and Kumiji is teaching at 6 p.m.
Wow, we have big Wednesdays, I think.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. And remember, we are a community supported podcast. If you like what we're doing, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. And for your monthly contribution of whatever you like, you get access into vaults of learning, education, and fun community, as well as Bhakti 12-step. Thanks to our Bhakti 12-step twins, Nancy and Jiva, for organizing all this. Thanks for everybody engaged in this whole process and this whole community. It just makes me want to sing and dance at 5 in the morning.